At the entrance, a woman stood frozen, clutching her purse like a lifeline. Her ex-fiancé was there, with his new fiancée, and the room felt suddenly smaller. Desperate, she turned to the man beside her in line. "Can you pretend to be my date for tonight?" she whispered. He paused, a faint smile playing at the corner of his lips. "Sure," he said softly. She didn't know the stranger she just begged for help was the CEO her ex used to work for. Emily Carter had learned to measure her self-worth in small, manageable units. Patients helped, shifts completed, rent paid on time. At 29, she'd become an expert at being enough in her work while feeling perpetually insufficient everywhere else. The pediatric ward where she worked loved her. Her patients' parents trusted her. But somehow that hadn't been enough for James. Her ex-fiancé had ended their engagement 6 months ago with clinical precision. "You're wonderful, Emily, but you're not ambitious enough. You're content with your little nursing job while I'm building an actual career." 3 weeks later, his Instagram showed him with someone new, Miranda, a marketing executive with perfect teeth and a wardrobe that cost more than Emily's annual salary. Emily had been fine with it, really, until her best friend Maya insisted she attend the Hendricks Foundation charity gala. "You need to get out," Maya had said. "Wear something pretty, drink expensive wine. Remember you're a catch." Emily had agreed reluctantly, borrowing a dress that was nice but clearly not designer. She felt like an imposter among the gala's glittering attendees, women in gowns that sparkled like captured starlight, and men in suits that probably cost what she made in a month. She was standing in the lobby, gathering courage, when she saw him, James, with Miranda. Both of them laughing, comfortable, belonging in a way Emily never had in his world. Her chest tightened. Her hands went cold. The rational part of her brain said she should just leave. The irrational part, the hurt, humiliated part that still remembered James calling her not ambitious enough, refused to run. She turned desperately to the man standing beside her in line, tall and calm in an impeccably tailored black suit, checking his phone with distracted air. "I'm so sorry to bother you," Emily blurted, "but can you pretend to be my date for tonight? My ex is in there and I can't walk in alone and prove him right about me being pathetic." The man looked up from his phone, his eyes gray, intelligent, faintly amused, taking her in with an assessment that felt thorough but not unkind. He was maybe late 30s, handsome in the understated way of people who didn't need to try. "Your ex is in there?" he asked, his voice low and measured. "With his new fiancée, who's probably perfect and ambitious and everything I apparently wasn't." A smile played at the corner of his lips. "Only if I can choose the wine." Emily blinked. "You'll actually do it?" "Why not? I was dreading this evening anyway. Might as well make it interesting." He offered his arm. "I'm Daniel." "Emily, and thank you. Seriously, I owe you." "Let's start with you not owing me anything," Daniel said, and guided her into the ballroom. The effect was immediate. James spotted them almost instantly, his expression shifting from surprise to confusion to something that looked like jealousy. Daniel's hand rested gently on Emily's back as he navigated them through the crowd with practiced ease. "You're really good at this," Emily whispered. Daniel's smile was faint but genuine. "Occupational hazard." Emily laughed, feeling tension ease from her shoulders. Maybe this evening wouldn't be a disaster after all. She had no idea that the man whose arm she was clutching owned the very corporation sponsoring the gala, that his occupational hazard comment wasn't a joke, that pretending to be her date was the least complicated thing Daniel Hayes had done all week. As they moved deeper into the ballroom, James continued to watch them, and Emily felt a small, petty satisfaction. For the first time in 6 months, she didn't feel like the woman who wasn't enough. Daniel leaned down slightly. "The man staring at us, is that the ex?" "That's him. He looks like he regrets his life choices." Emily tried not to smile and failed completely. "Does he?" "Absolutely. You, on the other hand, look like you're having a wonderful evening." "I am now," Emily admitted, and realized she meant it. The evening unfolded with surprising ease. Daniel proved to be exactly what Emily needed. Attentive enough to be convincing, charming enough to be enjoyable, but respectful enough that she never felt uncomfortable. They moved through the gala together, their conversation flowing naturally between comfortable silences. When James finally worked up the courage to approach, Daniel's response was masterfully calibrated. "Emily's told me wonderful things about you," he said, his tone so perfectly balanced between polite and pointed that Emily had to bite her cheek to keep from laughing. James excused himself quickly, and Emily felt 6 months of hurt ego finally start to heal. "That was incredible," she whispered once James was out of earshot. "What was?" "The way you said that. Like you were being nice but also quietly destroying him." "I have no idea what you're talking about," Daniel replied with false innocence. "I was perfectly civil." They escaped to the balcony eventually, both needing air and space. The city spread below them, lights reflecting off glass towers. "Thank you," Emily said, looking at the skyline. "Seriously, you saved me from a public meltdown. I would have spent this whole evening hiding in corners, watching James look happy, feeling like I'd failed somehow." "You didn't fail. He did. Anyone who makes you feel insufficient because you chose a meaningful career over a lucrative one isn't worth your time." Emily glanced at him, surprised. "How did you know that was his issue?" "Lucky guess. Plus you mentioned you're a nurse earlier. It doesn't take much imagination to figure out that someone in healthcare chose purpose over profit. He said I wasn't ambitious enough, that I was content with my little nursing job while he was building an actual career." Emily's voice went tight. "What do you do, specifically?" "Pediatric oncology, kids with cancer. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. And the most important, holding a scared 5-year-old while she gets chemo, helping parents navigate the worst moment of their lives. It matters. But it doesn't come with a corner office or 6-figure salary. So to James, it wasn't real success." Daniel was quiet, and when Emily looked at him, his expression had shifted into something more serious. "I fund a lot of medical research, cancer treatment programs mostly. The work you do, that's not a little anything. That's the foundation everything else is built on." "You fund medical research?" "Among other things." Daniel looked uncomfortable. "I should probably mention, I own the Hendricks Group, the company sponsoring tonight's gala, the corporation where your ex used to work before he moved to our competitor." Emily stared at him. "You're Daniel Hendricks?" "Just Daniel is fine." "Oh my God, I begged a billionaire CEO to be my fake date. This is mortifying." "Why is that mortifying?" "Because you're, and I'm just..." "Emily." Daniel turned to face her fully. "Do you know how many events like this I attend? How many people want something from me? How many conversations where I can tell the person is calculating my net worth?" He smiled genuinely. "You asked me to help you with something honest, messy and human and real. You saved me from 3 hours of polite conversations about market trends. Still want to keep pretending?" Emily felt warmth spreading through her chest. "Now I really need to. The story's gotten way too good to stop." They talked for another hour on that balcony. Daniel told her about his charity work, how he'd started the foundation after his younger sister died from leukemia. Emily told him about her patients, about the little boy who'd just gone into remission, about the families who became like extended relatives. "You asked me earlier if I was ambitious," Emily said eventually. "The answer is yes. But my ambition is to make sure every kid I treat feels safe and loved. That's success to me. If that's not impressive enough for some people, that's their limitation, not mine. It's more than impressive, it's essential." Daniel pulled off his suit jacket as Emily shivered, draping it over her shoulders. "For what it's worth, your ex is an idiot." Emily pulled the jacket closer, noticing the label, Hendricks Group, embroidered on the lining. "This morning I was worried about affording new scrubs, and tonight I'm wearing a billionaire's jacket while he tells me I'm impressive." "I meant it. I know. That's what makes it surreal." As the evening wound down, Daniel offered to walk her home. Emily declined initially, but then the rain started, and somehow they ended up sharing an umbrella, walking through wet streets while the city shimmered. They didn't talk much, didn't need to. The silence felt like a conversation, the kind of quiet that only happened between people who'd already said the important things. At her apartment building, modest compared to where Daniel probably lived, Emily returned his jacket reluctantly. "Thank you for tonight, for pretending, for being kind when you didn't have to be. Thank you for asking, for being honest when you didn't have to be." Daniel pulled out his phone. "Can I have your number? I mean, If this was a real date, that's what I'd ask for. Emily felt heat rise to her face. Are you asking as Daniel, who helped me tonight, or as Daniel Hendricks? Just Daniel, the guy who had a better evening than he's had in months, thanks to a woman brave enough to ask a stranger for help. And not Shorty. Emily gave him her number, and when they said goodbye, neither wanted to leave. But eventually Emily climbed the stairs, and Daniel disappeared into the rain, and both lay awake wondering if the connection they'd felt was real or just the product of a strange, perfect evening. The next morning, Emily woke to texts from Maya demanding details, and one from Daniel. Coffee this week? I promise to only pretend to like you. She smiled and agreed. Coffee became dinner. Dinner became walks in the park near the hospital. They texted throughout the day. Daniel sending pictures of boring board meetings. Emily sending photos of kids' artwork. Their connection deepened with inevitable ease. But reality had complications. 3 weeks after the gala, Emily overheard two nurses gossiping in the break room. She's totally dating him for his money. Why else would Daniel Hendricks be interested in someone like her? Maybe he likes the novelty. Rich guys slumming it with regular people makes them feel charitable. Emily had frozen in the hallway, her heart sinking. She'd started to believe this could work. Now she wondered if everyone saw her as a gold digger. Daniel faced his own challenges. Victoria, his PR manager, cornered him after a board meeting. The photos from the gala are circulating. The board wants to know if this is serious, because if it is, we need to manage the narrative. Manage the narrative? Daniel felt anger rising. This is my personal life. You're the face of a billion-dollar firm. Your personal life is public life. We can spin this. CEO with a heart of gold dating a nurse, very humanitarian. But you need to decide how committed you are. If this falls apart publicly, it affects the company. What are you suggesting? Be strategic. If this is casual, end it quietly now. If it's serious, we need to control how it's presented. Either way, you can't just date her like a normal person. Daniel resented the implication but couldn't dismiss it. He'd built his company carefully, protected his public image. Dating Emily genuinely meant giving up control, accepting that people would judge. He started pulling away. Texts came less frequently. Plans got canceled. The easy warmth they'd built started to cool, and Emily noticed but was too proud to call him out. Then the tabloid article appeared. Billionaire CEO's secret romance. Is Daniel Hendricks dating a hospital employee? The article was benign, but it included photos and enough speculation to make Emily's private life suddenly public. Her colleagues started asking questions. Patients' parents recognized her. The hospital administrator called her in about maintaining professional boundaries. Emily felt like she was drowning. She tried to talk to Daniel, but he was distant, distracted. They had one terrible phone conversation where everything felt wrong. Emily hurt and defensive, Daniel logical and withdrawn. The breaking point came at a press conference. Daniel was unveiling a new charitable initiative when a reporter asked about his relationship with the pediatric nurse. Instead of deflecting, Daniel did something surprising. Yes, I'm seeing her, he said clearly, looking at the camera. Her name is Emily Carter. She's a pediatric oncology nurse who spends her days taking care of sick children. And she didn't ask for this attention. I did. So if you have questions about my personal life, direct them to me, not to her. The room erupted. Victoria looked furious. The board would be livid. Daniel's carefully maintained control had just shattered spectacularly. But he didn't care. He was done pretending, done letting other people's opinions dictate his choices. Meanwhile, Emily was at the hospital when the press conference aired. She watched in the break room surrounded by colleagues and felt her throat go tight. The hospital administrator called her in again. Emily, this attention isn't good for our patients. Reporters are calling. I think it's best if you take some time off. You're suspending me? Temporary leave. Paid. Just until the media loses interest. Emily left work feeling like she'd lost something essential. She'd built her identity around being a good nurse, and now even that was being taken away. She went to the hospital one last time to clean out her locker, to say goodbye to the kids, and that's where Daniel found her. He looked tired, stressed, still wearing his suit from the press conference. Emily. She looked up from packing, tears streaking her face. You shouldn't be here. More reporters will follow you. I don't care about reporters. I do. I care that I can't do my job because dating you made me a story. I care that my colleagues think I'm using you. I care that you pulled away because I complicated your life. Emily's voice broke. You asked me to pretend at the gala. I'm done pretending. Us, it's too complicated. You asked me to pretend, Daniel said softly, stepping closer. I'm done pretending too. I pulled away because I was scared of the attention, of failing you, of not being able to protect you from the ugly parts of my life. But I'm done letting fear make my decisions. So am I, Emily whispered. I'm scared all the time. Scared I'm not good enough for your world. Scared everyone's right about me being out of my league. Scared that loving you means giving up parts of myself. Then let's be scared together. Let's stop pretending this isn't hard and just try anyway. Daniel reached for her hands. You said your ambition is to make sure every kid you treat feels safe and loved. My ambition is to build things that matter. Maybe we can do both, together, if we stop letting other people define what that looks like. Emily looked at their joined hands, at this man who'd become essential. I don't know how to do this. How to be with you and still be myself. Neither do I, but I'd like to figure it out, if you're willing. Emily thought about the gala, about asking a stranger for help and receiving so much more, about pretending and what it meant when pretending became real, about being brave enough to ask for what you needed. Okay, she said finally, let's figure it out. Daniel pulled her close, and Emily buried her face in his chest, breathing him in, cologne and coffee, and the particular scent of home she was learning to recognize. They stood there in the empty locker room, surrounded by the detritus of her nursing career, and chose each other despite every complication. What happens now? Emily asked. Now? We stop pretending. We build something real. The weeks following Daniel's press conference were challenging. The media attention was intense. Photographers outside Emily's apartment, reporters asking invasive questions, social media dissecting their relationship. But gradually, as Daniel had predicted, the interest faded. What didn't fade was their connection. Daniel established clear boundaries between public and private life. He moved Emily into a more secure building, not because she needed protecting, but because she deserved privacy. He worked with Victoria to manage press inquiries, and he made sure everyone knew Emily's career and autonomy were non-negotiable. Emily returned to work after 2 weeks. While some colleagues still whispered, her patients didn't care who she was dating. They cared that she showed up, that she listened, that she made them feel safe. One evening, Daniel surprised her at the hospital with takeout, and they ate in the break room while Emily told him about her day. The 7-year-old who'd finished chemo, the family struggling to afford treatment. I have an idea, Daniel said suddenly. What if we created something specifically for this? A foundation focused on pediatric cancer care. Not just research, but practical support, covering treatment costs, providing housing for families, funding hospital programs. Emily stared at him. That would be incredible, but that would cost millions. I have millions. What I don't have is the expertise to do it right. That's where you come in. Over the following months, they built it together. The Carter Foundation, named after Emily despite her protests. Daniel provided the capital and business infrastructure. Emily provided the medical knowledge and understanding of what families actually needed. They worked with hospital administrators to identify gaps in care. They established partnerships with pharmaceutical companies to reduce medication costs. They created a fund for families who couldn't afford to take time off work. It was complicated, exhausting work, but it was also deeply meaningful, the kind of work that honored everything both of them valued. The foundation's official launch was scheduled for 6 months after the press conference. Emily spent weeks preparing, nervous about speaking publicly. The night before, she and Daniel sat in his apartment. She'd been spending most nights there, and she admitted her fears. What if I mess this up? You won't. You're going to talk about what you know, taking care of kids, supporting families, why this work matters. Just be yourself. Being myself got me mocked on social media for months. Being yourself also saved my life, Daniel said quietly. I was going through motions before I met you, building wealth, managing businesses, but not feeling connected to any of it. You reminded me why any of this matters. The foundation launch was smaller than typical Hendricks Group events. They held it at the Children's Hospital where Emily worked. invited patients and families alongside donors and press. Daniel gave a brief speech about his sister, about loss and legacy. Then Emily spoke. She was nervous at first, her voice shaking. But as she continued, the nervousness faded, replaced by passion, by the fierce love she had for her patients. "This foundation exists," she said, "because I asked someone for help, and he said yes. That's how healing works. We ask, we receive, we pass it forward. Every dollar donated helps a family ask for help without shame, helps a child access treatment without their parents having to choose between saving their life and saving their home." When she finished, the applause was genuine, sustained. Patients' parents approached her afterward, thanking her through tears. Donors committed funds. The press coverage was overwhelmingly positive. Walking out that evening, Emily leaned against Daniel's shoulder, exhausted and exhilarated. "We did it. You did it. I just wrote checks. You did more than that. You believed me when I said this work mattered." Daniel kissed the top of her head. "We make a good team. We really do." The foundation grew steadily. They helped dozens of families, funded treatment programs, created support systems that made tangible differences. And through it all, Daniel and Emily learned to navigate their relationship's complexities. The public attention, the different worlds they came from, the constant balancing act between his corporate obligations and her healthcare passion. It wasn't always easy, but it was real, built on mutual respect and shared purpose. One evening, after a particularly long day at the foundation, they sat on Daniel's balcony watching the sunset. Emily was quiet, thoughtful, and Daniel waited patiently. "I keep thinking about that night at the gala," she said finally. "How desperate I was, how I thought the worst thing would be facing James alone. And now look at us. We've built something that actually helps people. My moment of humiliation turned into this." "Your moment of courage," Daniel corrected. "You were brave enough to ask a stranger for help. That's not humiliation. That's strength." "I didn't feel strong. I felt pathetic. The strongest people I know are the ones willing to be vulnerable. You taught me that." Emily turned to face him fully. "You know I love you, right? I don't think I've actually said it out loud, but I do. Completely, ridiculously, in ways that terrify me." Daniel pulled her close. "I love you too. Have since approximately the moment you begged me to be your fake date and looked at me like I was your last hope. You were my last hope. Best decision you ever made. Best decision we ever made." 1 year after the gala, the hospital hosted another fundraiser, this time celebrating the Carter Foundation's first anniversary. Emily stood in the same ballroom where she'd once begged a stranger to be her fake date, marveling at how completely her life had changed. The evening's formal program ended, and the crowd dispersed. Emily found herself near the balcony where they'd first really talked, and Daniel appeared beside her with wine. "Remembering something?" he asked. "Everything. The panic. Begging you to help me. Not knowing you were the last person I should have asked for fake date assistance." "Why the last person?" "Because you were real, and I'd spent so long accepting being treated as not enough that real scared me." Daniel set down his wine and took her hands. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "That night, you asked me to pretend. I'm wondering if you'd be interested in something more permanent. Something that's definitely not pretending." Emily's heart stuttered. "Daniel, I'm not good at emotional speeches, but here's what I know. You make me better. You challenge me, ground me, remind me why any of this matters. And I'd like to spend the rest of my life building things with you. Foundations, programs, a family if you want, whatever we can imagine together." He pulled a small box from his pocket, and Emily started crying before he even opened it. "Emily Carter, will you marry me? Will you let me be your real date, permanently, for every event, and every quiet evening, and everything in between?" "Yes," Emily managed through tears. "Obviously, yes." The ring was beautiful, simple, elegant, exactly what she would have chosen. And as Daniel slipped it onto her finger, Emily thought about beginnings, about how the things we think will destroy us sometimes save us instead. The balcony doors opened and several people spilled out, including James and Miranda. James spotted them, took in the scene, and his expression settled on something that might have been genuine happiness. "Congratulations," he said simply, and Emily heard the apology underneath. "Thank you," she replied, and meant it, because James's rejection had led her here. As the evening wound down, Emily and Daniel stood together, watching the party continue without them. "Still glad you asked a stranger to be your fake date?" Daniel murmured. "Best decision I ever made. Even though I turned out to be your ex's boss? Especially because of that." They laughed together, and the sound mixed with music from inside, with city noises from below, with the life they were building from one brave question and one genuine answer. Around them, the foundation staff were packing up, families were saying goodbye, and the world continued its relentless motion. But Emily and Daniel stood still, holding each other, choosing each other, building something real from what had started as pretending. Sometimes the stories we fake to protect ourselves become the ones that finally set us free. And sometimes asking a stranger for help is the bravest thing we can do. The moment that changes everything, that leads us home, that teaches us what love actually looks like when we're courageous enough to receive it.